Welcome to another episode of Learn English with Podcast Conversation. In today's episode, we will help you boost your English communication skills by mastering small talk, specifically discussing weekend plans. Listening to podcasts like this one not only improves your listening skills, but also helps you learn new vocabulary and phrases you can use in real-life conversations.
Thomas, that's right. Whether you're chatting with friends, colleagues, or even meeting someone new, knowing how to ask about weekend plans and sharing your own is a great way to build rapport. So let's dive in and explore how these simple topics can make your conversations more engaging and natural.
So, Thomas, what's a simple way to ask someone about their weekend plans?
One of the easiest ways is to say something like, "Do you have any plans for the weekend?" It's casual and open-ended, which invites the other person to share whatever they're comfortable with.
Yes, that's great. You can also ask, "What are you up to this weekend?" It's friendly and encourages them to talk about anything interesting they've planned.
Thomas, exactly. It's also important to be genuinely interested when you ask. If someone says they don't have any plans, you can follow up with a simple, "Oh, that sounds relaxing." Sometimes it's nice not to have a packed schedule.
Once you've asked about their plans, it's natural to share your own as well. For example, you could say, "I'm thinking about going hiking on Saturday," or "I've got a family BBQ planned." It helps keep the conversation flowing and shows that you're open to sharing your own interests.
Right, and sharing something personal, like a hobby or interest, can often lead to more engaging conversations. You might find you have something in common with the person, like both loving hiking or attending events in the city.
And even if your plans are simple, like relaxing at home, you can still say, "I'm just going to take it easy this weekend and watch some movies." It's all about connecting with the other person.
One thing I find really useful when discussing weekend plans is finding common ground. For example, if someone says they love hiking and you've been hiking recently, you could say, "Oh, I went on a hike last weekend, too. Where do you usually go?"
That's a great point. Building rapport is key, and when you find something you both enjoy, it opens up more opportunities to talk about shared experiences. You could even suggest meeting up for a shared activity like, "That sounds fun. Maybe we could go hiking together sometime."
Exactly. The goal is to keep the conversation light and engaging. It's small talk, so it's meant to be easygoing and enjoyable for both people.
So, Thomas, how do you respond when someone tells you their plans?
A good response shows interest and enthusiasm. For example, if someone says they're going to a concert, you could say, "That sounds amazing." Who's performing? It keeps the conversation going and shows that you're genuinely interested.
Absolutely. You can also ask follow-up questions like, "How long have you been into that band?" Or, "Is this your first time seeing them live?" It keeps the conversation lively and makes it feel more personal.
And remember, the goal of small talk is to connect. So even if their plans are simple, like spending the weekend at home, you can still respond with, "That sounds nice." Do you have a favorite show you're binge watching?
Another way to keep the conversation going is to invite the person to elaborate on their plans. For example, if they're going hiking, you could ask, "Oh, where do you usually hike?" "I've been meaning to explore new trails."
Exactly. And if they mention something like attending a party, you could ask, "Is it a special occasion?" Or, "How do you know the host?" It's all about showing curiosity and encouraging them to share more details.
When you encourage further conversation, you also create opportunities to relate and share your own experiences. It makes the small talk feel more meaningful. Follow-up questions are a great way to keep the conversation flowing. For example, if someone mentions they're going to a barbecue, you could ask, "That sounds fun. Are you bringing a dish, or is it a big gathering?"
Yes, and it's a subtle way to show interest in what the other person is saying. Even if you don't have much to add to their plans, these kinds of questions can keep the dialogue engaging.
And it doesn't have to be too detailed, just enough to show that you're listening and interested in learning more about their weekend.
When someone mentions a hobby or activity they're into, it's a great chance to share your own interests. For example, if they say they're going kayaking, you could reply with, "I've always wanted to try that. How difficult is it to learn?"
Exactly. And you don't need to be an expert on the topic. Even just expressing curiosity or asking for recommendations makes the conversation richer.
Yes, it makes small talk feel more genuine and creates opportunities for future conversations. They might even invite you along for the next kayaking trip.
Another way to keep the conversation light and positive is by using encouraging feedback. If someone shares exciting weekend plans, you can respond with something like, "That sounds awesome. I bet you're going to have a great time."
Right, even if you can't relate directly to their plans, a little enthusiasm goes a long way. People appreciate when you show genuine interest and positivity.
It's all part of building rapport. Positive feedback helps people feel comfortable and encourages them to keep talking.
One thing to avoid in small talk is giving short, closed responses. If someone asks about your weekend and you just say nothing much, it can end the conversation quickly.
Yes, it's much better to add a little more detail, even if your plans are simple. For example, you could say, "I'm just taking it easy this weekend, probably going to catch up on some reading." It gives the other person something to respond to.
Exactly. By sharing a bit more, you keep the conversation flowing, and it shows that you're open to engaging.
Humor is another great tool for small talk. If the conversation is feeling a bit stiff, you could lighten the mood with a playful comment. For example, if someone says they're staying home all weekend, you could joke, "Sounds like a Netflix marathon is in your future."
Thomas, that's a good one. A little humor can make the conversation feel more relaxed and less formal. It helps put people at ease.
Just be mindful of the tone and context, but in general, humor is a great way to make small talk more fun.
When discussing weekend plans, you might find the conversation naturally drifting toward other topics. For example, if someone mentions going hiking, you could transition by saying, "That sounds amazing. Do you often go hiking? I've been looking for new outdoor activities."
Exactly. Transitioning helps keep the conversation dynamic. You can smoothly go from one subject to another, like from hiking to talking about favorite outdoor spots or even general fitness routines.
The key is not to abruptly change the topic, but to build on what the other person has shared, which keeps the flow natural.
Another effective technique is to find common ground. If someone mentions something you've also done, like going to a concert or trying a new restaurant, you can say, "I went there last month." Did you enjoy it? This adds more depth to the conversation.
Yes, shared experiences immediately create a connection. And even if you haven't done exactly what they're talking about, you can still relate by bringing up something similar, like, "I haven't been to that restaurant, but I love trying new places too."
It's a way to build rapport quickly, and it can lead to even more interesting discussions.
At some point, you'll need to wrap up the conversation, especially if you're short on time. A polite way to do this is by saying something like, "It was great hearing about your weekend plans. I hope you have a fantastic time."
Yes, it's always good to leave the conversation on a positive note. You could add something like, "I'd love to hear how it goes next time we talk," which leaves the door open for future interactions. Exactly. Ending the conversation on a high note keeps things friendly and encourages further conversations in the future. A great way to continue building connections is to follow up after the weekend. You could say, "Hey, how was your BBQ on Saturday?" This shows that you remember the conversation and are genuinely interested.
Yes, following up is a powerful way to deepen relationships. People appreciate when you take the time to ask about something they previously mentioned.
It's also a subtle way to keep the conversation going and make it feel less like small talk and more like a meaningful connection.
Lastly, if you sense the conversation might be drifting into silence, you can quickly steer it back with an open-ended question. Something like, "So, do you have any long-term weekend plans, like vacations coming up?"
Great point. Open-ended questions are always helpful to fill in any gaps. It gives the other person more to talk about and reduces the chances of an awkward pause.
It's about staying engaged and keeping the conversation light and enjoyable. Awkward silences happen, but with a little effort, you can avoid them.
Another way to keep the conversation interesting is by asking about weekend hobbies. You could say, "Do you have any hobbies you like to do over the weekend?" This invites the other person to share something they're passionate about.
Definitely. Talking about hobbies can lead to deeper conversations. For example, if someone says they enjoy painting or cycling on the weekends, you could ask, "How did you get into that?" Or "Where do you usually cycle?"
It gives you a chance to learn more about them and shows that you're genuinely interested in what they do in their free time.
And don't forget to share your own hobbies, too. It makes the conversation more balanced. You might say, "I usually spend my weekends working on my garden," or "I love cooking new recipes over the weekend."
Yes, sharing something about yourself helps the other person feel comfortable opening up as well. You can find mutual interests or even discover new hobbies through these exchanges.
Plus, it gives the other person a chance to ask you questions, which keeps the dialogue going and makes it feel more like a two-way street.
You can also use weekend plans as a regular conversation topic with someone you talk to often. For instance, you could start a Friday conversation with, "Any exciting plans this weekend?" It's an easy icebreaker that works almost every time.
That's true. People usually enjoy talking about what they're looking forward to. And if you see them regularly, it becomes a nice routine where you check in with each other about weekend plans.
It's a great way to maintain an ongoing connection and make starting conversations easier each time.
Sometimes you'll come across people who don't have any specific plans. In that case, you could say something like, "Sometimes a quiet weekend is just what you need. I enjoy staying in as well."
Exactly. Not everyone is busy with events or activities, and that's okay. Relating to them by talking about relaxing or simple plans keeps the conversation balanced.
You can even share your own quiet weekend ideas, like, "I love catching up on my favorite TV shows or reading a good book."
One fun way to tie weekend plans into the conversation is by linking it to the weather. You might say, "It looks like it's going to be sunny this weekend, perfect for a beach day."
That's a great way to transition the conversation. The weather is often connected to what people plan to do, so it's a natural bridge between topics.
Exactly. And it's an easy way to keep the conversation going, especially if you're talking about outdoor plans like picnics or sports.
You can also ask about weekend getaways. If you know someone enjoys traveling or quick trips, you could ask, "Do you ever take weekend getaways? Any favorite spots nearby?"
That's a great question, especially if you know the person likes exploring new places. And if they do have a favorite spot, you can ask follow-up questions like, "What do you love most about that place?" Or any recommendations for a day trip.
It's a fun way to learn more about their interests and possibly discover a new destination for yourself.
Don't forget, weekend plans can also be a great Monday conversation starter. You could ask, "How was your weekend? Did you do anything fun?"
Yes, this works especially well if you talked about weekend plans on Friday. It's a natural way to follow up and continue the conversation.
Plus, it shows that you were listening and are genuinely interested in what they did. It's a great way to build rapport over time.
Another way to keep the conversation going is by suggesting plans together. You could say, "We should plan something for next weekend. How about trying that new restaurant?"
That's a great way to turn a casual conversation into a potential plan. It gives both people something to look forward to, and you've created an opportunity for future conversations as well.
Exactly, and it also shows that you're interested in spending more time with them outside of just chatting.
Some people have weekend traditions they love to talk about. You could ask, "Do you have any weekend traditions, like a regular brunch or family outing?"
That's a good one. Traditions are usually tied to personal values or routines, so it can lead to a deeper conversation about what's important to them.
It's also a chance for them to share something meaningful, which can really help build a connection.
And don't forget, you can always add a little humor when talking about weekend plans. For example, if someone asks about your plans, you could say, "I'll probably just sleep the entire weekend. That's my kind of relaxation."
Humor is such a great way to make the conversation light and fun. It helps the other person relax and might even lead to some funny stories or shared laughs.
Exactly. Keeping things lighthearted can make the conversation more enjoyable and less formal.
Discussing weekend plans doesn't have to be limited to friends. It can also be a good way to build rapport with colleagues. You could ask on a Friday, "Any fun weekend plans coming up?" It's a nice way to break away from work talk.
Definitely. Weekend plans can help make work conversations feel more personal and less focused on tasks. It's a great way to build a positive atmosphere in the office.
And it also helps create common ground, especially if you find out you have similar weekend activities.
One important thing to remember is to keep the conversation balanced. You don't want to ask all the questions without sharing anything yourself.
That's right. It's important to share your own plans too. You could say, "I'm planning a quiet weekend at home. I might catch up on some reading." That way, the conversation feels more mutual.
Sharing your plans also gives the other person a chance to ask about you, which keeps the dialogue going smoothly.
A good tip for discussing weekend plans is to ask open-ended questions. Instead of saying, "Did you do anything this weekend?" you can ask, "What did you get up to this weekend?"
That's a great strategy. Open-ended questions encourage the other person to share more details and lead to a longer conversation.
Exactly. It helps avoid short answers and keeps the discussion flowing naturally. If you're meeting someone new, weekend plans can be a great way to break the ice. You could say, "Do you usually have busy weekends, or do you like to relax?" It's a friendly, non-invasive question that can lead to a lot of different responses. It's perfect for getting to know someone without diving into more personal topics right away.
And from there, you can follow up with questions about what they like to do in their free time, which helps build a connection.
When you're wrapping up a conversation about weekend plans, it's nice to end on a positive note. You could say, "That sounds like a great weekend. I hope you enjoy it."
Yes, leaving the conversation on a high note shows that you're engaged and wish them well. It's a simple but effective way to create a lasting impression.
And it also leaves the door open for future conversations, especially if you ask about their weekend again the following Monday. So whether you're making plans or just chatting about the weekend, it's a great way to connect with others.
Absolutely. Small talk about weekend plans can lead to meaningful conversations and stronger relationships.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you found these tips helpful.
See you in the next episode. Take care and have a great weekend.
Bye for now.